In 2018, NetEase paid $20 million for an Overwatch League franchise slot, which is kind of ironic considering that in a few short years, they'd create maybe Overwatch's #1 rival. But they assembled a roster, hired coaches, and moved their team to Los Angeles, and proceeded to lose every single game they played for the next 409 days. The Shanghai Dragons finished their first season 0-40. I didn't misspeak, yep, 0 wins and 40 losses. The worst single season record in the history of professional sports. Not just esports, literally all sports. They broke a record held by the Philadelphia 76ers and the Detroit Pistons for the most consecutive losses in a row. I mean, the Dragons were trying their hardest, and somehow they did worse. 3 years later, they won the Overwatch League Championship. This is the absolutely bewildering story of the Shanghai Dragons in the Overwatch League. To understand how the Dragons went 0-40, you need to understand that literally everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Their star player, Undead, got released mid-season, and the official reason was vague, but it was kind of a disaster with him being publicly exposed for cheating on his girlfriend, and the resulting drama absolutely destroyed the team. So their best DPS is gone because he couldn't be loyal to anything, and their head coach stepped down after stage 2. The replacement coach then steps down due to health issues, and they had burned through 3 head coaches in 1 season. When they signed Korean players to fix the roster, including Geguri, the first female player in Overwatch League history, the interim head coach decided the solution to communication problems was to ban the Korean players from speaking Korean. They had to use Mandarin only. They really took the Shanghai Dragons name to heart. It was a language that they didn't even speak. This is like hiring a French chef to save your restaurant and then telling them they can only use chopsticks. I mean, it was insanity. So in an attempt to defend themselves, the team manager posted a letter defending their practice schedule. And in it, he reveals that they had practiced 10:30 in the morning to 10:30 at night, sometimes midnight, 6 days a week, 72 hours of practice. I mean, they were grinding 12 hours a day, and they still couldn't win a single match. I mean, I think at some point you start to wonder if the over excess of practice is maybe a little bit counterproductive, especially if you're not winning a single game. Meanwhile, other teams prepared for Shanghai not because they were scared of losing, but because they were terrified of being the team that lost to the Dragons. No one wanted to be that 1-40 scoreline, so every opponent showed up focused and motivated, while Shanghai stumbled in, running on 4 hours of sleep. Now, the Dragons were pretty desperate to change the situation that they were in, and it was supposed to be a turning point when they signed the prodigy Geguri. She was the first female player in Overwatch League history. Before the league even existed, she'd been accused of cheating because her Zarya aim was too good, and pro players publicly said they'd quit if she was legit, which is like, it's so petty, and looking back, like, it's such a bad look. But Geguri didn't care. She proved that she wasn't cheating by playing in a monitored studio with a camera on her hands. Her accusers quit, and it is unbelievable what this female player had to go through just to prove that she was as talented as some of her male peers. But she did it regardless, and she joined the Dragons hoping to turn things around. Unfortunately, the state of the team was in such shambles that not even she could carry them. I mean, they continued losing. And she stayed with the franchise for 3 years anyway. She was the first woman in Overwatch League that joined a team that went 0-40 and stuck with them. And I gotta respect that loyalty. Now, here's the weird thing about the Shanghai Dragons. The fans actually kind of loved them, and it was kind of a weird situation where they were like this memeable team that people just kind of liked rooting for as underdogs. Not because they were good, but because their suffering became community service. I mean, fans developed drinking games based on player debts, and they bet on loss margins instead of wins. The Dragons released 0-40 merch, and it actually sold. Fans wore the hoodies to the arena like a badge of honor. And during the matches, the crowd went insane whenever Shanghai won even a single map. Not even a match, just a map. Taking one round off an opponent was treated like a championship moment. Other teams' social media accounts even rooted for them. Now, going into season 2, the promise was that they would do better, and the Dragons kept 3 of their players and released everyone else. New coach, new rosters built around Kangdu Panthera, a contenders team that had been a runner-up in the major tournaments. They traded for Gamsu, a main tank from Boston, 2 days before the season started. Things were looking on the up and up. So they opened season 2 with 2 losses. The first game was against the Hangzhou Spark, and they lose 1-3, following a 0-4 loss with the Vancouver Titans in the next game. The franchise was now 0-42, continuing the longest losing streak in professional sports history. It had made international news. People who had never touched Overwatch somehow were talking about the Shanghai Dragons. Leading up to February 23rd, 2019. It was week 2. Shanghai Dragons were playing against the Boston Uprising. Gamsu was playing against his former team, the one that had just traded him 2 weeks earlier. Shanghai knew from the start that if they were able to play around Sombra, maybe, just maybe, they could eke out a win. And after 4 challenging games, the Shanghai Dragons had finally gotten their first win, defeating the Boston Uprising 3-1. Now, the crowd went absolutely insane. Twitch chat was full of people rejoicing. The Shanghai Dragons had done it. 409 days of losing had finally come to an end. People were literally crying. Chinese live streams flooded with "The Dragon is awake," and Boston would forever be known as the team that lost to the winless Shanghai Dragons, and it was so worth it. I mean, this was cinema. Okay. So the Dragons had 1 win. Surely it was a fluke. The Dragons were still low to mid-tier at best. Well, not so fast, my friend. They went 3-4 in stage 1, 4-3 in stage 2, and then stage 3 happened. The meta shifted away from GOATs, which meant DPS players actually mattered. Shanghai had Ding's Pharah, DM's Widowmaker, 2 of the deadliest damage dealers in the league who had been stuck running support roles all season. They went 5-2 and entered playoffs as the 8th seed. Their first opponent, the undefeated New York Excelsior. This was the underdog story of the ages. The Dragons pulled off the 3-1 upset. Their second opponent, the Vancouver Titans. Now, this was personal. Vancouver's roster came from Runaway, the team that had beaten Shanghai's core in contenders the year before. The Dragons won 4-1. And lastly, for the final opponent, the San Francisco Shock, defending stage 2 champions. Shanghai took a quick lead in this. They went up 3-0, and then the Shock woke up. San Francisco won Havana with a full hold. They won Ilios. They won Iconwolf. And suddenly, it's starting to slip away from the Shanghai Dragons. Suddenly, it's 3-3. Map 7 goes to Dorado. The Shock barely pushed past the first checkpoint. Shanghai's defense was suffocating. Things raining rockets from above. DMs picking off players at spawn. On attack, the Dragons only need to pass the same checkpoint they did with time to spare. And they do it. Absolutely legendary. 4-3. Shanghai Dragons had done it. They'd become the stage 3 champions from going 0-42 to stage 3 champions. Gamsu is crying in the post-match interviews. He says, "I've been a pro gamer for 5 years, and this is the only time I've actually won a big tournament." And you can tell how much it means to the players after all that they had been through. The team that had just went 0-40 just beat the top 3 teams in the league back to back to back. And it was a new era. The era of the Shanghai Dragons. And in this new era, the Shanghai Dragons asserted their dominance. Now, 2020 was the next year. It was another year for the Shanghai Dragons to show why they were the best. They had a new roster, Fleta from Seoul Dynasty, a rookie sensation named Liv, Fearless back from the academy team, and Shanghai proceeded to go on an absolute tear. 27-2 in the regular season, the best record in the league. Won 2 stage titles. Fleta won MVP, Coach Moon won Coach of the Year, and they made the grand finals. They beat Philadelphia Fusion, and then lost to the San Francisco Shock 2-3. They dropped to the lower brackets and then lost to Seoul Dynasty 2-3. Their season was over. Best regular season in Overwatch League history, but they had failed to make the championship. But it was a new year. New year, new Shanghai Dragons, and 2021 had a different structure. It was 4 mid-season tournaments and then playoffs, and Shanghai won 2 of those tournaments, the June Joust and the Summer Showdown. The June Joust final against Dallas deserves its own video because Shanghai went down 0-2 and slowly figured out Dallas's comp mid-match, leading to the reverse sweep and winning 4-3 after playing that specific comp for literally 2 days. Their playoff run was surgical. They beat the Shock 3-0. They beat the Gladiators 3-1 and then beat Dallas 3-1. They had made the grand finals. The only thing standing in their way was their opponent, the Atlanta Reign, and the match wasn't even close. Shanghai won Ilias, they won Hanamura, they won Kings Row, and then they followed it up by winning Havana. 4-0, a complete sweep. From 0-40 to 4-0 in the grand finals. Lip got finals MVP, the Shanghai Dragons, the team that held the record for the worst losing streak in professional esports, were Overwatch League champions. And the funniest part, after winning, they barely celebrated. It looked like another day at work. 6 years of suffering, of winning stage finals, but not being able to win it all, culminating to this trophy. It was cinema. They had done it. They had finally achieved the peak of the Overwatch League. And of course, with such highs in 2021, 2022 could only be followed by some lows. 2022 was rough. Overwatch 2 had just launched. The game went 5v5. And Shanghai's playing style didn't fully translate. Their tank line struggled to adapt. Fleta looked lost. They went from dominant to mid-tier overnight. And then the summer showdown happened. Junker Queen was released. And who are you? A Genji specialist who had barely played all year became a permanent starter in an attempt to change things up. And then Shanghai randomly looked like 2021 again. They won the whole tournament and everyone was confused. They went right back to struggling the next stage and got eliminated in playoffs, but for a brief moment, the whole league was terrified that maybe the Dragon had reawakened. 2023 was worse. They had a budget roster and Fleta role swap to tank for some reason. They were losing to contender teams. They finished 5-8 and it was just a complete collapse. It was crazy to think that just a few seasons ago, they had won a grand final. But that was just the thing with Shanghai. I mean, they had the most contradictory franchise history in perhaps all of esports. The longest losing streak in professional sports history, but also the most stage titles of any Overwatch League team. 6 stages plus a championship, 7 total trophies, more than the Shock, more than anyone. They went from 0-40 to fielding one of the greatest rosters of all time, and then right back to being terrible. The highs were astronomical, the lows were historic. There was no other franchise with this range. The Overwatch League is dead now. The whole thing collapsed, as I explained in one of my previous videos, but before it died, it gave us this story. A team that went winless for an entire season, broke records held by teams that were trying to lose, practiced 12 hours a day and still couldn't figure it out, lost their best player to a cheating scandal, burned through 3 coaches, and became the laughingstock of professional esports. Then, that same franchise rebuilt, restructured, and was reborn, beat everyone, and won their championship from 0-40 to 4-0. There's probably a lesson in there somewhere about perseverance or whatever, but mostly I think it's just proof that esports is weird and unpredictable and fun. Sometimes the worst team in history becomes the best team in history if you replace literally everyone on the roster, but that's not the point. Anyways, subscribe if you want more of these stories. I got plenty, and thanks for watching.